damn websites that start playing sound or with videos with sound the moment you connect to them.
Yeah, I don't understand what's going on because we fought this fight in the 90s.
Right? Yeah, we did. This is like something that we dealt with friggin' MySpace, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, pop up, autoplay music, autoplay videos, pop up ads. Even though they don't pop up exactly the same way they used to pop up, they now pop over the top of a page so that you can't read what's underneath it.
It became like a pop arms race.
Yeah.
Where all the browsers started to incorporate pop-up blockers, so all the advertisers found a way around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't understand why all this is bad. This is back. It was bad practice in the 90s. It is bad practice now. I don't need your, I mean, at least they're not MIDI files. But I don't need to hear your news sites are really bad about this. Like the autoplay video, they will devote all kinds of resources to loading and playing their little news video.
Well, that's exactly what just hit me. I just logged on to NBC New York because I just noticed that a state of emergency has actually been declared in New York with the snowstorm.
Oh.
And so I need to reach out to my parents, and though they're not in the thick of it, they're not in the worst of it. But it looks like they could have gotten at least 10 or 12 inches of snow. So as soon as I logged in to check what's going on, they're stupid, that music sting that they always play at the start of every dramatic news thing, like, bum, 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 just starts blasting into my headphones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I mean, this is like a fight that we won. And now we're having to refight it. I am not down with this.
No, like I said, it's now we're in a Cold War arms race with advertising.
Mm-hmm. Although Google is, I can't remember exactly what it is, but the Chrome browser now or soon will begin discriminating against sites that do that. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, I know.
They were the first one to integrate the pop-up blocker, right? Which, and then a way was found around that. And then they have the mute all, like they have if you right click on a tab, you can select mute site so that no matter what that website is doing, it won't play sound.
Right.
So they'll find a way to do this, and then the advertisers will find a way around it again. It is an arms race.
Yeah, I know. I hate it. And you tell kids that today, and they don't believe you.
That's because honestly, in talking to people younger than myself, I have discovered, and this is probably true of us too, way back in the day.
Yeah.
But they seem to think that nothing happened before they came along.
Wow.
Like there is no history before. Like everything that's happening is unprecedented.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was shocked the other day to be offered to view a YouTube video that had kids reacting to dial telephones and not being able to figure out how they were supposed to work. Like, okay. It's not like it's a complicated instrument.
Right?
I don't know. I just want a nice, clean internet. And I understand, they have to pay for it somehow. Yeah, I know. I would suggest this is maybe not the way.
No, honestly, but okay, so how if not advertising, how would most websites be free?
How would most websites be free? They could have advertising on them, but I would prefer that the advertising not jump out at me and demand that I interact with it in some way. Okay,
so now you are asking for advertising that is easily ignored.
I am.
So now let me ask you a question.
Yes.
You are a company that wants to sell or, buy advertising. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is advertising that would be easily ignored really cost beneficial to you in any way?
It might be if the advertising was relevant to the page that you're viewing. So somebody has come to that page and is looking for information or whatever about something.
Right.
And your advertising was targeted to viewers of that page, not targeted to other things I was interested in, and then I came to this page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need, for instance, the website for, say, let's say Toys R Us, okay? Even though I know they're going out of business. I don't need the website for Toys R Us to pop up an ad. Yes, they are.
That is so sad.
I will explain that to you in a minute.
Okay.
So I don't need the Toys R Us site to surface ads about a bunch of books I was looking at on Amazon earlier in the day. I'm there for the toys. So what I should see over there are ads for toys.
Yeah, I just out of curiosity, Toys R Us popped up advertisement for legal services and one for website domain hosting.
Yeah. Are either of those two things the stuff I go to Toys R Us for?
No, but obviously they are related to things that I have been up to recently.
Right.
Which, but this is the problem, because they have been trying many, many different ways to make advertising as relevant to users as possible. And that is one of the ways, and relevant to the site and all of that stuff. And none of it works. Nobody clicks through this stuff. No, they know exactly how many people engage with their ads.
Yeah, the conversion rate is about 2%. Right.
Which is why we're now at the point where like native advertising has become the thing. Which again is something that everybody behaves like it's a new thing, but we joke about FARC all the time, and that's just, advertising masquerading as news again. Which was an old joke back in 2005 when we were making it, when FARC was making it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but I don't, they're not getting any more clicks by shoving it in front of me. They didn't back in the 90s. They're not now.
I know, but they're desperate.
They don't need to track me. They just need to have ads on the sites I go to that are relevant to that site.
Really? How often do you even, I have never, I don't think ever clicked on an ad.
No.
For anything on the internet.
No.
Like even relevant. They've been like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to do that. It's like, no, if I'm looking for something, then I will click on, I will go to a search engine. I'll go to Bing and search for what I'm looking for.
Right.
And then if I'm not looking for something, advertising has no direct effect on me. The effect of advertising is basically so that it can get into your prefrontal medial cortex, so that the moment you are looking for something, you never ever forget that the advertiser's product is the option.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing though. If you make them relevant, like if I go to Toys R Us, okay, and on Toys R Us's front page, there is an ad for like a new Star Wars toy coming out. Okay.
Right.
Then I go, oh, they have new Star Wars toys coming out. Maybe I should look and see what's going on with that. If I'm interested in that sort of thing, which I usually am. And then right there on the Toys R Us site, I go Star Wars toys, and there's the revenue.
Yeah, I guess. Basically, we're talking about two different approaches to advertising. We're talking about the impulse approach, which is trying to get someone to act in the moment.
Right.
Which is, that's what you get with like toys and stuff. Or recent releases or whatever, but I'm talking more like the general advertising and marketing you see from like Coca-Cola and and McDonald's. All of that advertising is designed just to stick in your brain, so that when you are craving a quick meal, the first thing your brain does is say, well, "What about McDonald's?" Or "Oh, you're thirsty? What about Coca-Cola?"
Yeah. That's why, what is it? 40 years later, we can still all do, I'd like to buy the world of Coke.
Right? Well, that's the thing. And everybody says like, well, how useful is this advertising? And I think about it, it's like I don't know how widespread this is, but on Long Island, there was a company called Empire that sold carpet. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you would call them, you could get a free estimate, and they would come and measure and whatever. I have actually never bought carpet in my life. Okay. I've just not been in a situation where I had to carpet anything.
Right.
Right now in my apartment, it's, we're not carpeting this place and, but anyway, but if I were to ever buy carpet, I would dial 800-238-9800.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
800-988-2300. That's what it is. Empire Today. By the way, this episode's sponsored by Empire now.
Yeah.
Because, that stupid jingle is now so caught in my head. I will never forget going to Empire.
Yeah. I don't know if these reached you out there, but I think there's at a certain age or a certain time, I'm going to say late 70s through the 80s, there wasn't anybody I knew who didn't know about Cal Worthington and his dog Spot.
No, that doesn't.
Yeah, they were a California car company. Cal Worthington ran this place, and his dog Spot was any variety of a number of different animals. Emus, kangaroos, alligators once, I think, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's just, you're right, though. It gets in there and it sticks.
Right, and that's the sole part. The problem is that's not quantifiable.
No.
Like, companies cannot measure the effect of whether that sort of advertising is actually what is driving people to pick McDonald's or call Empire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, except for tracking the metrics over a very, very long period of time.
Right.
And then correcting for natural growth and any other factors and word of mouth. And so it's like a logistical nightmare. So you can't track, like, especially online, for many years, it became the conventional wisdom that was the way to market. That a company like Coca-Cola, there was no point in them trying to advertise to get you to buy a Coke right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or advertise a new product because it's Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. Instead, their wisdom was, we just never want people to forget Coca-Cola is the option to drink. When you want a soft drink, it's Coca-Cola. But all of a sudden, the internet came along and it offered this chance to track people's engagement with advertisements. And it's like they had this massive brain fart and forgot that engagement with advertisements only works for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like buy this new book today that just came out.
Right.
As opposed to, hey, have you had McDonald's today? What was it? Have you had a break today? Right? Have you had your break today?
At McDonald's? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Remember the Mac Tonight commercials?
It's Mac Tonight. Yeah, I remember that.
With that terrifying moonhead guy?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Now I feel like we've wandered into Demolition Man.
It's possible. But yeah, I'm just on the whole, I'm tired of being advertised at, and I know that is not a unique position to hold.
No, you and everybody else in the entire world.
Which tells you what about the advertising?
Nothing, because it doesn't matter whether you're tired of it or not. The point is that it has to get into your brain like a Trojan horse.
Uh-huh.
And no matter how much you insist that advertising doesn't get into your brain and it has no effect on you, it does.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence is there. Everybody is affected by advertising.
Yeah. Especially
the people who claim it's not.
Remember, a negative effect is still an effect. The other thing advertising related I wanted to mention is Travel Oregon just put out a video on the YouTubes trying to get you to come visit Oregon. And this is probably one of the hottest videos a travel agency hit, or a travel what do you want to call it?
A tourism board.
Yeah, tourism board. Yeah, probably one of the most effective ads a tourism board has ever put out. Every bit of it is a lie. But it's such a beautiful lie that people are watching it all over the place because it looks like a Miyazaki film.
I don't know, I'm on Travel Oregon's website now, and it's asking me, do I feel spontaneous, silly, curious, nostalgic, relaxed, or magical?
Jesus, just go to YouTube.
I feel 3 of them right now.
If you go to YouTube and click the trending button, I'll bet you it's in there somewhere, in amongst all the other terrible trending things that are there. I don't even want to talk about that.
I don't ever click that trending button. I don't care what YouTube thinks I should be watching. YouTube is wrong.
I know. YouTube is always. That's a whole nother discussion, that old YouTube algorithm.
Right.
Oh, how about that? It's not in there. All right, I'll find it for you.
It's the heading is only slightly exaggerated.
Yes, I know.
All right,
that's a lie also.
I am instantly suspicious. I have to turn down the volume a little bit. Or I guess I could mute it. Is the sound important?
It's just music mostly.
Okay. I am instantly suspicious of a travel advertisement, particularly one that is advertising traveling to a place whose primary attraction is its natural beauty.
Right.
I'm instantly suspicious that this entire thing is animated. Like, it seems to me, if you want to convince me that this is a beautiful, a naturally beautiful, magical place that I want to see. Right. Take a camera.
Take a few pictures.
Give me a few examples.
Yeah. I know, but you go ahead and watch this amazing piece of art.
Is that bike path, that wooden Swiss Family Robinson bike path through the redwood trees, actually a thing?
Probably.
Huh. Wait, do you really have fish in the rivers that are so big that they could devour a inflated raft with 6 people in it?
No.
Huh. Okay. I guess that's the slight exaggeration.
Neither do we have giant rabbits.
What about that talking, well, he looks like he's a talking anthropomorphic frog at the end there.
Nope. Neither do we have giant sky whales, I have to point out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's Australia.
Clearly it's intended to evoke a mood, but I wouldn't rely on that for accurate information.
Well, that's the thing, is it's very beautifully animated. I can't deny that.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful piece of work. It's just the worst. Like, who is falling for, like, oh, I really should go there. That looks amazing.
Right. Just in case you're thinking about coming to Oregon and you believe there is and you believe there is a grain of truth somewhere in that video, I have to tell you, for the most part, Oregon looks like a lot of blacktop going in one direction.
Is that away from Oregon?
Yeah. The thing is the parts of Oregon that are kind of in this video sort of are not what you might call easily accessible.
Well, I did catch Wizard Island and Crater Lake.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Very good.
And
Portland.
I guess.
And the dragon boat races.
What is that one mountain that appears to be surrounded by wetlands?
It's probably Mount Hood.
Mount Hood? Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of that video has things that are in and around Portland.
Okay.
Which essentially ignores about 98% of the state. There are a few bits of other places, but most of it's Portlandish. Anyway, the point.
You forget I came from New York, which, New York City, and then there's 98% of the rest of the state that is nothing.
Right. So the state is actually inside the city, as far as I understand.
Right. That's basically it.
That's what.
And quite frankly, having visited many parts of New York, inside and outside the city, I'm prepared to attest that most of the city is New York City, or most of the state is New York City. Oh. And the 98% of the rest of the state is pretty much useless. There was actually a move to fission off New York City and Long Island from the rest of New York State.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the big issues, without going too much into politics, is that you find that the urban centers in various states tend to lean one way politically, and the outer areas lean a completely different way.
Yep.
And I mean, this was the part of the idea behind the Electoral College was not to allow the domination of urban centers in elections. But, I realize we're going into trouble there. So you tend to find, like, people talk about red states and blue states, but what you really find is that there are these bright blue spots, which are the urban centers in otherwise seas of less populated red.
Right.
And so that tends to lead to states who feel that the major urban centers pay no attention to the needs of the rest of the state.
Exactly.
So yeah,
that's a very Oregon thing too, by the way.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Anybody who doesn't live in Portland or Salem is like, what are you people doing up there? We exist down here.
Right.
We would like some attention, please.
Well, and Seattle as compared to the rest of Washington also.
Right.
And basically you have 3 states in California: San Francisco, Los Angeles, and California.
Right. Yeah. See, we have a thing out here, and it's been a thing for a number of years and has never really gone anywhere in particular. It's called the state of Jefferson.
Yeah.
Which basically is supposedly a bunch of people, the word supposedly applies to bunch.
Right.
Want to secede from Oregon and Northern California. What they want is basically everything from Eugene down to, I think it's, I want to say Wairika, but I think it's further down than that in California.
Okay.
We just want to fraction off and form their own state, because we find our interests are aligned better that way than they are with the north end of Oregon and the south part of California.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's been around for, has to have been 100 years or more. And it's never gotten anywhere. Nobody's ever even seriously attempted anything. But our local public radio station refers to itself as Jefferson Public Radio. So there. Because that's kind of their service area.
It's actually interesting in Chicago, because although Chicago is extremely liberal in most of its leanings, there are sort of hotbeds of conservatism in it. Because it's sort of you read, what was that? The American Nations?
Yes. Yeah.
And Chicago is actually a border town between what would be called Yankeedom and the Midwest or Middle America. And you can kind of see in some places those two ideals clashing.
Right.
And I still highly recommend that book to everyone. I just sent my copy to my father.
Oh, nice.
You could read it.
Yeah. And now we're going to have a link to it in the show notes. So there you go.
Go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% recommend that one if you want to have any idea of why politics in the United States are so screwed up.
See, people say that. Politics in the United States is not any more screwed up than politics anywhere else.
Oh, no. But this is the reason. It is
demonstrably less screwed up than in many places, to be quite frank.
Like Kosovo. Is that still a thing? Is that still a problem? I don't know, really. Maybe I shouldn't reference that. Maybe I should reference somewhere else with a lot of shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or maybe
Somalia. There we go. Somalia.
Maybe we should just, grab the wheel and swerve away from this topic.
Okay, fine.
before we go too far. But
right.
But the book, just to plug it for the listeners, it explores the fact that when the United States was founded, there were actually numerous different cultural groups that came from different places in Europe, who each migrated to the United States for different reasons. And those values did not mix across the country so much as set up their own little domains and then spread across the country. And so what the book posits is that there are, what was it, 11 of them?
Yeah.
There are essentially 11 different cultures, 11 different American cultures. And it's a fascinating study because once you start reading it, it really throws into sharp relief, various divisions in various political divisions that you see, in previous elections. And I don't just mean the last election, but basically everything that has happened from about the 19, honestly, back from the beginning of time, but like 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, all of the seeds for the various cultural back and forths that have happened, because it's all happened before. Young people who think this is the first time there has ever been a massive culture war in the United States, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I've been through 3 of them now.
3?
3?
4.
4?
4. It's got to be at least 4.
Well, I guess. I'd say I think I'm too young to say the 70s.
There's one about every 10 years.
Yeah. Well, it's a generational shift.
Uh-huh.
And if generations are very reactive. As you look through the history, you find that I like to refer to it as a pendulum.
Yeah.
Things swing one way, and then they go too far in one direction, and then they swing back the other way. And fortunately, one of the big advantages we have in the United States is the number of guaranteed freedoms that ensure that the culture can actually swing back in a non-violent way before things explode. It's not always perfect. It doesn't always work, but
right.
It's sure of a hell of a lot easier for the culture to swing back and forth here than in, say, like North Korea.
Yeah, they went over there and nailed the pendulum to the wall.
Yeah. Well, it's, that's what a totalitarian regime does, whether it's a right totalitarian regime or a left totalitarian regime. It's all the same. They all use the same playbook.
So rather than continue with the politics hour here.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
started with advertising.
Right, that's okay. We'll presume we've made our point. What else has been on your observational plate this week?
Actually, I would like to go back, if I may, and talk a little bit about Horizon Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes, that was the game that I mentioned I had started playing last week after rejecting Chain of Memories.
After finally taking your inoculation against Chain of Memories.
Oh, God. But I feel like I was a little hard on the game and said some things that were a little bit unkind. I referred to the game as shallow.
Now wait a minute. Which one? Horizon Zero Dawn?
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Did I don't even remember what I discussed, and this episode isn't even out, so I can't go back and listen to it even if I would, which I wouldn't.
Right.
Did I really talk about the premise or what the game was?
I think you kind of did. We didn't get very deep into it.
Okay. So it's very brief. It is a post-apocalyptic game. Okay, it is one of those games where the apocalypse happened, the post-apocalypse happened, which I call the Fallout period.
Right.
And then that period collapsed. Nature reclaimed most of the world, and then human civilization started rebuilding itself from basically the Stone Age. And then, so now you have basically primitive but spiritual peoples moving around in the ruins of modern Earth, or future modern Earth, which has been mostly reclaimed by nature. You know the basic setting, right?
Right. Yes.
It's a very familiar trope.
And then there's weird stuff going on with I don't know what's.
Well, it is basically it is an open world survival game, except that it's a little more tightly focused than most.
Right.
You know, it's not so open world as like Far Cry or what have you. It's a little bit more focused. There is definitely a very strong narrative through it, and the narrative is interesting. Although it is heavy-handed with its themes, as I said, the actual coming-of-age story at its heart, assuming the character goes through an arc and does not remain a completely useless, I almost used a bad word to describe her.
Uh-oh.
She's an adolescent. Okay, and she was raised only by her adopted father. And so she begins the game thinking she knows everything and not being afraid to criticize everyone, rather unkindly, and rip apart the society that she is ostensibly a part of. Especially in the name of rationalism. I am hoping, considering that while she is a generally compassionate soul, she's not a terrible person. She is rather unkind and full of herself, and I'm hoping there is a character arc in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming there is, because it's being set up well. Though the game does a really interesting... It shoots that in the foot in a really interesting way, too.
Okay.
So narratively, the game is pretty strong. The graphics, the landscapes are absolutely gorgeous. And the game has one unique selling point. Okay, and that is roaming the world are robot animals. Okay?
Right.
There's robot gazelle or deer or whatever. There's robot buffalo. So basically anything that you know, like, because it's very steeped in Native American lore. Anything Native Americans might have hunted, there is a robot version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what is very interesting is the way the enemies are constructed. Because you have the enemy itself is obviously, you know, the robot is a creature. But it has armored plating attached to it in various locations that you can dismantle through use of various skills. Like you can actually shoot off armored plating to create vulnerable points with your bow or with your spear, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also components that are mounted on the machine. Things like fuel tanks and coolant tanks. Though, of course, they're called things like blaze and chill water and stuff, because you can't say that, you know.
Right.
They're primitive. They don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's not sci-fi enough if everything doesn't have a different name.
Right. And the things have radar antennas, and so, you know, some of them can scan for you, and some of them have weapon mounts. And if you can target the various components, and use certain attacks against those various components, you can do things like make critical strikes on vulnerable points, or disable a robot's ability to scan for you or communicate with other robots. And what you find is herds of these robots that have herd behaviors, right? And you have all these different ways of dealing with it, different weapons like tripwire traps and, you know, your bow and stealth and, you know, striking from above or below and whatever. And the animals all react in different ways to your presence. Some get scared and run off, or some get scared and most of them run off, but one breaks off from the herd to like try and trample you while the herd runs away. So if you're trying to hunt components, because, you know, you gotta hunt for the precious robot meat.
I am sort of wondering what you're supposed to do with it all, but carry on.
Well, you mainly use it to craft stuff or sell it.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean, it is useful. Well, the fun thing is, like, you come upon a herd of creatures, And you're like, man, I really need to get as much blaze water as I can because I'm on a quest for it, or because I need to make more fire arrows because I'm going to go hunt this thing that is vulnerable to fire, or whatever. And you know that there's skittish robots that will flee if they detect your presence. But there are choke points in the area, so you might set up explosive tripwire traps in the choke points, and then run up and spook the animals, and then they'll run into the tripwire traps, and you can take out most of the herd, and then, pick through their components. And all of the places where the animals appear, I call them animals, machines, appear, are very well designed. So it's not just that they plunked these herds down in open spaces on the map. Like, there's always gullies and cliffs or stealth areas, because you can only stealth in certain specific... There's a specific type of tall grass that is red, and you're a redhead, so you can hide in the stealth grass, and you're almost undetectable there. So there's a very simple set of rules and mechanics that allow you to approach each herd of animals like a puzzle. And it's like, how can I take down the most of them without getting killed myself, or without them all running away, or without them all turning on me and goring me to death? That's the unique selling point, and it's fun. Okay, in fact, I spend more time just like, oh, there's a herd of shell walkers, which are giant robot crabs that carry cargo containers that often have valuables in them.
Totally makes sense.
Right. And if you don't, and again, you learn that, like, if you don't knock off the cargo containers before you kill the creature, the contents of the cargo containers get destroyed. So and if you knock off the cargo container, but it's still got its big grippy attack claw, it will pick up the cargo container with its attack claw, which could disable its attack claw. So, like, the animals have well thought out behavior, and it's really neat the way they're all put together of these components.
Okay.
And I wanted to sell all of that because I owed the game an apology for calling it shallow.
Oh.
The problem is that whole set of mechanics around hunting robot monsters and learning their vulnerabilities and, approaching each herd like a logic puzzle and taking them all out is just not quite enough to carry a video game. Do you know what I mean?
Tell that to the Monster Hunter people.
Well, that's exactly it. But there is so much more going. Like, Monster Hunter does it differently, but it also does it deeper. Okay. Their mechanics are fun, but they just don't have enough variety in their creatures, or enough variety in their tools. And the combat engine it's more of a stealth and hunting engine than a full combat engine. Like, Monster Hunter has a very rich combat engine where the different weapons that you have different moves and abilities that you learn to use. Right? Whereas in this one, it's more like you've got a bow, you've got the ability to set traps, and you've got a spear, and you've got stealth. So it's not as deep as Monster Hunter.
Okay.
But Monster Hunter also gains because Monster Hunter is instanced, where it's not just an open world.
Right.
So the reason I called the game shallow is because around that really unique mechanic that is a lot of fun to play with, they seem to have just grabbed all of the other things from all of the other open world survival and hunting games out there. In fact, there's a lot of Far Cry in it, but not quite as deep as Far Cry. And like I said, there's a bit of Monster Hunter in it, but not quite as deep as Monster Hunter. And there's like Shadow of Mordor or Arkham Asylum in it, but not as deep. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they had to, and I'm only doing this to explain why I called the game shallow, because it doesn't quite deserve that. But it seems like they had to turn in an essay for their teacher, and the teacher demanded 500 words. And they had 200 really solid words. And then they had to fluff it up, and they stole whatever they could from everything else to do it.
Oh.
And that's why I called it shallow.
Okay.
So
you've had reason to revise that opinion somewhat?
No, I just, on reflection, I just felt I was being unfair because, to be totally honest, in my off time, and I haven't had as much off time as I usually do in these past 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But in my off time, I have been playing the game rather obsessively.
Okay.
And I am having a hard time pulling myself away from it. It's a lot. In fact, I just restarted my playthrough.
Jeez.
Well,
did you miss a collectible?
There's a couple of things that happened.
Uh-huh.
Because there are some clumsy bits to the game. Okay? One of the things is that it's got a skill tree. You know, every level you get a skill point, and then you can use 1, 2, or 3 skill points to unlock a skill in the tree.
Sure.
And they mostly amount to new or slightly different abilities. But the value of those skills is not equal by any sense.
Oh, one of those.
Yeah, and now I have gained about 30 levels in the game. I think I've been playing 20 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up sinking a lot of skill points into 2 skill trees that seemed like they would be useful, but they have not aged well.
Mm.
I assumed the melee combat in the game would be a much bigger thing than it was. And that in the early game, you can get away with meleeing the machines. But I have reached the point, now you would be surprised to learn that meleeing a robot buffalo is not a strategy for long-term success.
You can't just run up and stab it?
No. It barely even notices.
Wow. That seems unfortunate.
Yeah, but the early machines that you fight, like you can deal with them. Your melee is much more useful. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I like melee, so I'll just sink, 8. I ended up sinking like 6 skill points into 8 skill points into various melee abilities. And since you only get 1 skill point a level, that was pretty detrimental.
Yeah.
There's also, as there are in many survival games, there are the skills that maximize your gathering and foraging and crafting abilities. Things like, there's an increased chance for this stuff to drop, or you use less resources to craft. And now in going through the game, I am never ever ever starved even remotely for resources. And because I will get completely distracted by, oh my god, there's a herd of robot buffalo over there. Let me go and eliminate 6 of them. Which is also where the Native American themes kind of fall apart. Right. Because I will come upon a herd of animals, and my first thought is not, well, I'll pick off one of the stragglers and loot it just for what I need. My thought is, I bet I can take down that entire herd, hoard every component from them, and now
never have to hunt them again.
Right? Except that I still do. So I'm basically a force of extinction in this world.
Right. The Far Cry series, I've played like 2 or 3 of them. Boy, are they uneven. But every once in a while they'd have these skills. I don't remember them in particular, but every once in a while they'd have these skills that were like, improved chance to critical on a Tuesday.
Right.
And it's right there in the main skill tree. And you're like, do I put points in that? Is it always Tuesday? How often is this going to be useful?
Right.
But you have to put points in it to get beyond it to the thing that's really cool,
Yeah. And I mean, and that's, you make that decision in a lot of skill trees. Like, this, I don't really care about this skill, but I do want this later on awesome skill. Yes. So I will sink points in this stupid skill. And that, and honestly, smart game designers actually do that on purpose, because what they really want to do is increase the cost of the really awesome skill beyond what other skills in the same tier would be. And so they do that by dropping an intermediate skill that is highly specialized.
Right.
And making you just pay for it. It's just a way of increasing the cost.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah, okay.
When you're presented with a skill tree for whatever game, doesn't really matter which game it is, I don't think. When you're presented with a skill tree, and some of the options are passive, and some are active, do you tend to prefer passive skills or active skills?
I know I'm weird in this. Because I understand how people's habits generally go. But I go for a mix.
Yeah.
Okay, because one of the things that I know about in my own game playing is that if I have too many verbs, I'm not going to ever end up using them all, and I'm going to have a hard time reacting with the right verb, the action, active skill, a thing, a special thing I can do, a verb. Right. If you have too many of those, you become indecisive.
Sure.
Or you end up just ignoring half of them anyway, because you can only keep so many of those skills in your head anyway. Right? There's only so many moves and button combos you can keep in your head.
And eventually, anyway, one of them becomes optimal, and that's the only one you ever use for the rest of the game.
Well, a well-designed game, that shouldn't happen.
Well, then I have not played some very well-designed games. They haven't released any very well-designed games for quite a while then.
Well, and one of the things I would say is that a well-designed skill tree should be patently aware of people's limitations, because most people will prefer an active skill, that is being able to do a new cool thing, over a passive bonus.
See, that is not me.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I will take passive bonuses, and because they're on all the time, I don't have to remember to trigger them.
Right. Right. Though, of course, obviously, to some extent, this is also a question of incomparables.
Right.
It's like you can't, like, a passive bonus that gives you a bonus to every melee attack is really useful in a game where you are constantly in melee or even mostly in melee.
Right.
But trying to compare that to a skill that lets you jump over gaps you couldn't otherwise jump and access areas that might have treasures.
Right.
You just can't even compare those two. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if those treasures then include things that give you melee combat bonuses, it might actually work out to be objectively, you get better passive melee combat bonuses from being a better jumper.
Sure.
It depends on how the game's put together.
Yeah.
But I would say that if you're going to build a smart skill tree, you need to be aware of the fact that most people will tend to go for active abilities, and most people will ignore or forget about half of them. And balance out not just how many active versus passive abilities there are, but also never ask the player to choose between active and passive abilities. Like for example, in order to, like, the gateway to every active ability could be a passive ability. So that you guarantee that before someone can get an active ability, they have gotten a passive ability first. You just, like, you gate the skill tree so that people have a balanced number of passive versus active abilities. Or alternatively, your skill tree could just consist of passive abilities, and the active abilities could come from something else like equipment, or your skill tree could come entirely from active abilities, and the passive abilities could come from, like crafted, like modifiers to stuff, like magic items or whatever. But it all has to work in concert, and it all has to be really well designed. And I don't know that many skill tree designers, I will say I certainly know this is true in the tabletop RPG space. I don't think most RPG tabletop designers give any of this a thought. I know that the Dungeons and Dragons designers don't, because just based on the sheer number of spells that spellcasters get in their lives. That just shows that the designers do not actually care about how many active skills someone can keep in their head at one time. When they designed 4th edition, they did, though. They actually wrote a very interesting essay about it, because they were trying to decide how many attack powers versus utility powers every class should have over their life, which is ultimately how they hit on the fact that after you had a certain number of, like, encounter powers or daily powers, to get a new one, you had to forget an old one. So they gave it some thought, and then I guess, everybody at D&D just forgot that they had given that thought. And now we're back to the infinite spell book and the the classes that are nothing but passive bonuses, like fighters.
Well, you see, people don't like choices.
Yeah.
Or rather, they don't like being cut off from choices.
Right. But
So
again...
if you can have everything, you don't have to make a choice.
Well, the game designer's job is to protect the player from themselves.
Yeah.
Protect the player from optimizing the fun right out of the game. And I don't mean that just in terms of min-maxing. There's all sorts of ways to optimize the fun right out of the game. Okay, it is possible for, there's a certain breed of quote-unquote role player who believes that role-playing consists entirely of making a suboptimal character who only makes terrible decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know the type I mean.
I do.
Because failure is more interesting than success, and flaws are more interesting than strengths.
Yeah.
You know? And those people are also basically optimizing the fun out of the game for themselves and for the rest of the party.
Mm-hmm. Because
it is not fun to always fail any more than it is fun to always succeed. You know? Life exists on the balance.
That's right.
The only other thing that I wanted to mention in Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's just a really interesting observation that I made tonight.
Okay,
as I said, there is a strong narrative and a very strong characterization for both the main character and her father. And that's good, because I think they're setting up a character arc. But at certain points in the narrative, and so far there have not been very many, there are just a couple, you're presented with a situation where you can choose one of three approaches in sort of the dialogue box. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can choose basically what, like sort of a thuggish approach.
Mm-hmm.
That is just using your strength to bully your way through a situation.
Yes.
Or a compassionate approach, or the clever or insightful approach. Right?
Is this basically mean, good, or snarky?
No, it is a little deeper than that. I will say that it really does work out to be sort of bullying versus insightful versus compassionate.
Okay.
Which is not the same as mean, snarky, or whatever. She's snarky no matter what. She's really a snark monster.
I see. Okay.
Or she's not snarky. She's just sneering. She's smarter than everyone in the world.
Okay.
Gotcha. That's really what defines the character, is she's smarter than everyone in the world. Okay? Now, when you make a choice, obviously the dialogue reacts to whatever choice you've made. And then the story continues going as if, how the story will continue no matter what, in the same way it was going to.
Mm-hmm.
The actual choice you make changes nothing except the way that one scene plays out. And it'll still find a way to connect to the next scene the way it has to. And that's because obviously the game has to give you choice. But here's the problem.
But not meaningful choice.
Well, see, my problem isn't the whole meaningful thing.
Okay.
I have a different problem with it.
All right. What is your different problem?
Well, Tiny was watching me play.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was playing through the early game, I was choosing all of the bullying options. All of the options where she basically reacts with anger and contempt and a chip on her shoulder. Okay, because that is who the character is right now. And like I said, setting up for an arc, I'm sure of it. But that's it. And Tiny asked me, it's like, why are you playing her so mean? There's a scene where you have the option to get into a fight with your father because he's stubbornly telling you something that you don't agree with. Or you can be compassionate or insightful. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, this is a teenage girl, and the way she's been behaving this whole game, she is neither compassionate nor insightful. She is going to react with anger. And then something tragic happens. And of course, that tragedy is more poignant because basically the last interaction you had with the guy, if you chose that option, was to basically pick a fight and be a jerk. Which actually makes that that scene more meaningful.
Okay.
Right? I feel. The whole idea of choosing an option when you have such a strongly written and well characterized main character shoots that characterization in the foot. Because you don't have that choice every time. You can't, in most of the scenes, you cannot play the character compassionately or insightfully. Okay? She helps everyone around her because she's the main character of a video game, and it is her job to do all of the quests.
Right.
But like I said, she has a very strong, better than everyone, contemptuous streak about her. So trying to play her as compassionate in the 5% of the scenes where you get a choice just makes the character very dissonant. She's not nice. She's not kind. She doesn't care how other people see the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I understand, like, I know people are going to tell me that there's reasons in the story why she's like that. And I understand them too. You know, I understand there's reasons why she's a jerk right now. And maybe someday she'll get over it. I'm hoping. I will be so disappointed if in 60 hours I'm not like, wow, that was actually a really good character arc. You know? If she turns out to be right about everything and everybody just turns around, oh, I'm sorry, Rudolph, you can come play the reindeer games now. We were all the wrong ones. Then I'm going to be really disappointed, though I could see the narrative going that way.
Sure.
But anyway, my point is that the choice mechanic, apart from being completely non-meaningful, they failed to recognize the strength that they had in creating a very, very strong character. You know, and I don't mean strong like character strength or competence. I mean she's strongly characterized.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, you identify with her, you feel sympathy for her, but at the same time, you kind of want to slap her. You know, it's like, you know what? You got to get over it here. Right? Mm. And that's good because you're emotionally connecting with the character. But every so often I get to decide, no, she's actually really, really nice to this random person for no good reason. And it's like, why would you? And they only did that because they felt that they had to give you the choice. I know it. It's not a mechanic that was actually created because it fit into what the game was doing. It was a mechanic that was created because the video game, you know, because that's what you do in video games with dialogue boxes. And between that and the skill tree and the hodgepodge of mechanics that are all very nicely polished and work very well, but none of them which are quite as deep as anywhere else. As much as I love the game, it's like a really, really good amateur production. It really is. The design is a little amateurish. Very talented amateurish. Okay, and I want to see more from this company. I don't even know who did it. I guess I should find that out. I would play another game by them. I think, you know, they've got it going on. But oh my god, I can't believe I just said that.
Lincoln wrote into YouTube. Yes, we put our videos up on YouTube. See if you can find them.
Do we?
Yes, we do.
I didn't know that.
They've got neat little. There's all kinds of weird things going on visually, just to have something to look at while the words are being spoken by us. Anyway, on YouTube, Lincoln wrote in. He says, he actually asked a kind of a complicated question, which I sort of more or less answered, but this part I didn't have an answer to, so okay. I figured I would throw it at you real quick here.
Sure.
He wants to know, what do you use as maps for your players during combats? He says, I've tried individual pieces of paper taped together, but that's a considerable time sink for a fairly janky result. What about a whiteboard or laminated paper that you can draw and erase on easily? I've tried those as well, but you usually can't put all your maps on one of those at a time, so you have to drop parts in during the session, which doesn't seem right either.
Okay. So I use what I have always used, what I have used since they were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I use a vinyl battle mat.
Oh, yeah.
You can get them from ChessX. They sell some of the best ones. And it's basically just a vinyl marked out with a grid or a hex map on it, and you can draw on it with wet erase markers, what we used to call overhead projector pens, back when overhead projectors.
Yeah.
And you can, with a little spritz of water and a cloth, wipe it clean and draw again. But yeah, you are right. You usually can't put your entire dungeon map on one. But I generally only map the parts of the dungeon where there will be a combat when a combat breaks out.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, the map is just a visual aid for a fight.
Sure.
And even then, I don't even map all of my fights. I also do narrative combat if the combat is simple enough.
Yeah.
Like if there's just one creature in a room and there's not any interesting terrain, or it's just one creature and the creature's abilities are what make the fight interesting rather than the terrain around it, then I just handle it with narrative combat. But yeah, get yourself one of those. They're great. I think I have 3 of them now.
Cool. I have a couple of those. I don't tend to use them as much as I used to, though. Because I got 2 words for you. Gaming paper. Do you know what this is?
I do.
It's a big roll. It's almost like Christmas wrap.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's all gridded. And you can get them in hex or squares or whatever. There's maybe an isometric one, I think. Like that. And it just comes in this big roll, and I just lay the roll on the table and map the bit we're going to have a fight in, and you can draw it however you want to draw it, I think you can sort of use dry erase ink on it, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, aren't they? I have a couple of rolls of it. I've only used it once or twice. Mainly because, I don't know. Yeah, I was looking. It is reusable, at least according to the gaming paper company. It is reusable.
Cool.
I just I don't know. It's basically the same thing. It's just cheaper than the vinyl mat.
Right. I just sketch in what I need for the current combat or whatever, and when I'm done with that, I just pull it down and use the next section when the time comes.
Yeah,
it's
like the
fast.
butcher paper on the doctor's
exactly
table.
Exactly. Yeah. It's fast. I don't feel like I have to be super accurate with it. I can just sketch in and we can go, and it takes like maybe 2 minutes to sketch in what I need to sketch in, and then we have the fight and we move on, and it's all beautiful.
And that really is more important than the tool you use, is learning how to sketch quickly. And while you are sketching quickly, also describe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cannot stand when I watch a GM at like a gaming convention or whatever, where they just suddenly go silent and they're like, hold on, let me draw the map.
Right.
And then, okay, so this is the room. It's like, holy crap, give some description. As you're drawing, just narrate what you're drawing. It's like, oh, and over here is a massive statue of a 3-headed devil or something, and give a little flavor to it.
Right.
Otherwise you're just like, one of the advantages of D&D is it's not supposed to have a loading screen.
Right.
So yeah, learn to describe while you draw. Don't assume the map is the description.
Mm-hmm.
And learn how to draw fast. Okay, a table is a rectangle. A statue is a circle with a star in it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was like the standard Gygaxian mapping, right?
Buildings are square or rectangular. They don't need roofs on them if you're never going to go in them and you're going to be outside.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff. It's easy. Just do it really fast. Make the minimal shapes, and like like Scott is saying, be descriptive, because that's going to build the picture your players actually see beyond what's just on the map. That is purely, as far as I'm concerned, is purely a tactical representation of the situation.
Right. It's a visual aid. That's all it is.
Yep.
So,
okay.
All right. That was an easy one.
I know. I like those easy ones. They're fun.
We need more of that.
Right. We don't have it. Russell wrote in by email, and regarding, we had a discussion in episode 25 about card systems for checks rather than dice.
Yeah.
He says, I do recall that TSR pre-Wizards Takeover did experiment with that very idea with the Saga card system that they added to Dragonlance, despite the fans' protests. For its 5th Age game. He linked us to a Wikipedia article for Saga system. It says it worked by drawing and playing a numbered card and adding the number and the relevant attribute to determine the score. If the card you'd drawn had a symbol that matched the skill being used at the time, sword for melee, bow for arrow, or bow and arrow for ranged, whatever, you could draw another card and add that to the result.
Wasn't there a Marvel game that used that also?
I suspect there might have been, but I cannot guarantee it. Marvel, what is it? Marvel Superhero.
I guess I could click the link that he sent us.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay.
There we are. Which was published by TSR. So there you
Marvel Superheroes Adventure Game. Yeah. See, that was my I didn't play it. I had that game and I read it. But I never played it.
And I don't think either of us were saying it's never been conceived of. But yeah, it's nice to know that it was tried before and instantly hated, at least in that form.
Well, one of the key, there have been deck-based games, but like one of my favorite deck-based games is a game that nobody remembers, and it was a role-playing game that Wizards of the Coast put out before they owned Dungeons and Dragons. It was called Everway. It was designed by Bruce Cordell, right? Yeah, Bruce Cordell.
Sure.
No, I'm sorry, Jonathan Tweet.
Oh.
Yeah, I got the two. I don't know how I got them confused. It was designed by Jonathan Tweet. And it was like action resolution was based on a tarot deck, a special tarot deck designed for the setting.
Right.
The tarot deck existed as a game mechanic and also as an element of the game setting. And it was really neat. It was really neat. I'm just gonna stop there. But the key with the idea that I had was you only have 120 and 1 and the actual numbers that you roll are a limited resource. So before you get to roll a second 20, you're going to have to take a 1 on something at some point. That was really the element that interested me more, not the idea of replacing dice with cards.
Yeah. Deadlands, the original Deadlands used a deck of cards, regular playing cards, because you made poker hands. In particular, if you were what they called a huckster, who was essentially kind of a gambler type character. It's for those who don't know, Deadlands is Old West mixed with elements of Cthulhu-like setting kind of thing. Weird West is what they kind of called the setting.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you were a huckster, which was kind of like a gambler, you had your own deck of cards anytime you wanted to use magic. And what you would do is supposedly you were inhabited by what they called a Manitou, which is a spirit, basically.
Right. Not a Native American spirit?
Yes, with which you would have to play a hand of poker against them in order to access the magic. And you did not want to lose. Because they would corrupt you or take you over or whatever, make you do things you did not want to do. So but also they used it for resolution of some elements of combat, and they used it a lot in building your character. But that was a lot of fun. I think most of the recent versions of Deadlands, especially once it converted into Savage Worlds, it doesn't really use that anymore. But I love that system. That is a lot of fun.
I am trying to remember the name of a very obscure role-playing game system that one of Tiny's relatives lent me to read. Okay, and I cannot hopefully I will remember the name and can send it to you at some point so that you can at least put the link in the show notes. Or maybe if you recognize this role-playing game I'm talking about, send us some feedback.
Yes, write in and tell us about what he's about to explain.
Yeah. Okay. So it used a deck of normal playing cards as the resolution mechanic. Okay. So here is the idea. You are members. the characters are members of a punk resistance. And I mean literally punk rock. As in they are all band members, and there's classes like the I can't remember any of the classes. It doesn't matter. Okay? And you are resisting the alien occupation. Oh no, you are part of an alien resistance. Because what happened was this. All of the music from the 80s, all the punk music from the 80s, got beamed out into space, like it does, and some alien race was listening to it and was inspired by it. And then, after the 80s, the government cracked down Footloose style and created a totalitarian regime on Earth that banned like music and dancing and adolescence and fun. And so the aliens came to Earth to find out what had happened to the music and joined with the underground punk rockers to start a resistance movement.
Wow.
Right? I don't know where the heck he found this game.
Wow.
Or anything else, but I can attest to it. It was real. I held it in my hands. I read it. It was as fantastic as it sounds. And if you know the game I'm talking about, please let me know, because I cannot remember the name of it. And believe it or not, no amount of search engine foo is turning it up right now.
Wow.
I don't even know what to search for.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
Okay, well, if you know what that is, let us know.
Yep.
Jump in on the comments and tell us. Lost in Hyrule wrote into the website at digressionsandragons.com. He says, I was wondering about the statement Angry made about the GM also being a player. I certainly agree that the GM's enjoyment is just as important as the players. However, in identifying them as a player, it makes me wonder, how does the GM win the game they are playing?
The GM very rarely wins, but when he does, it's glorious.
Yes. I think it's important to understand that being a player does not necessarily mean there is a win or a lose condition.
I would get in trouble if I agreed with that.
Well, that's fine. You get in trouble if you agree with that, but I'm still going to be right.
No, it's a very meta argument.
Right.
Because I have in the past insisted that one of the things that a game must have to count as a game is a goal.
Oh, yes.
And a way to accomplish that goal.
Uh-huh.
And a way to not accomplish that goal.
Uh-huh.
Right? That's what makes a game a game.
Uh-huh.
It's an activity.
Sure.
So, but the thing is that although the GM is a player, the GM's goal is to create a game.
Right.
Okay. It is to create and present an entertaining game and to make that game be all of the things that a good game needs to be. Okay. So the game that the GM is playing is in providing just the right level of challenge to the players, rewarding their successes, punish. I hate to say punishing, but providing consequences for their failures, remembering everything they do and creating consequences in the world and changing the world and basically scrambling to keep up with the players.
So then by that reasoning,
yeah,
the GM loses the game if nobody shows up for it.
Pretty much.
Which means the GM wins the game every time somebody does show up.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. Do you want to expand further?
I think this is one of those. This is one of those questions where I have a hard time looking at that and not saying, well, aren't we just being a little bit petty and nitpicky at this point? Like I say that the GM is a player because the GM is a part of the game and must get enjoyment from the game. And the GM sits down with goals in mind. Just like the players do.
Mm-hmm.
The GM, obviously, the players sit down with goals like, win the adventure, get powerful, or, explore the world, or whatever goals that the player sits down with. And the GM sits down with a different set of goals. Make my players wet their pants with my awesome horror adventure.
Ooh.
Right? Or whatever. I've sat down with the goal of make my players cry over an NPC. I love that one. Stuff like that. But the GM does sit down with goals, and the GM is a part of the game too. As far as how does the GM win? Well, that is defined as much by the GM and the specific game as how the players win is defined by the game. Right? The players win by accomplishing the adventure and also by accomplishing their own personal goals. The GM wins by presenting the adventure and by accomplishing their own personal goals for the adventure, whatever it may be. And that's where I would actually just stop.
Works for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. Anon or anon, what do you think there? Anon?
Are they attempting to just be anonymous?
I don't know. That's what they gave me.
Okay. Anon.
Anon. Okay. Anon wrote into the website. He wanted to, I think, to inform us a little bit more about what the OSR is all about and the style that it gets conducted in.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
OSR is based on quickly generated characters, many times part of a roster, pointing at challenges that they might have to flee from or otherwise try to outsmart. If one dies, a henchman is there to step up. Characters start basically nameless and disposable, and players grow attached to them from surviving. The Dungeon and Gold is the main game loop. Dungeon Crawl Classic does this well. Newer games front-load player investment in a character with lots of customizing choices, and retreating is less common than winning done through listed character abilities, as opposed to random free-form situational ideas. I'm not sure that last paragraph totally made sense, but okay.
Well, I think what that last paragraph is pointing out is that OSR is an attempt to capture the classic feeling of role-playing games as described in that paragraph, whereas new games that are not part of the OSR focus, they basically build investment in characters from the get-go by asking players to build complete characters, and also focus less on character survival and retreating to live another day, and focus more on characters winning based on the abilities on their character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what he's trying to say. And you know what? Honestly, I really don't even have an argument with that assessment. It's entirely a fair thing to say.
Sure. So now my understanding has improved somewhat from where we were last week.
Yeah.
Which is that basically the OSR stuff is essentially the game that I and my friends played the first time we encountered D&D in like 4th grade, which was there's a dungeon, you plop your guy down at the front of the dungeon, and then you play through, perhaps randomly, perhaps, there was a plan for the monsters that were there, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And you played through until they died.
Right.
And then next week you came back with new monster or a new character.
Unless your character survived and then you started to get attached to them.
They never did. Not in my neighborhood.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, but that sounds like what it is.
Yeah. No,
at least based on this.
No, I buy that, and it's actually a really good explanation. Honestly, that is probably the most concise explanation for the values at the heart of OSR that I have ever heard, and it is also lacking in any value judgment, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good job there, Anon.
Yeah.
Good job. Now, a couple weeks ago, we were sent an email from Jan.
Mm-hmm.
He did a thing which I'm hard pressed to describe exactly, but apparently he has decided that what you and I need are some stats.
Okay.
Or at least what you need are some stats.
Well, apparently what I need is a character class, and you need a monster template.
Yeah. That hurts a little. That hurts.
Yeah, well. if it makes you feel better, a monster template is just a character class for a monster.
Right.
And also, far less awesome than having a character class.
Okay. Sure.
Well, I am actually looking at the statistics for the Angry One class and noticing again that this is clearly done in Pathfinder.
Oh, isn't it?
Or D&D 3.5.
Oh.
Yeah, it would have to be D&D 3.5 because I don't have no, maybe, I don't know. Okay, I do, I find this very, obviously, it's, you're right, I'm not sure where to start with this.
Okay, all right. We'll kind of walk through it gradually. Okay, so for the Angry One character class, you have a D10 for your hit die.
Right.
Does that seem right for you?
Oh, I'm a prestige class.
Oh,
okay. So some people are merely angry, but some take the extra step. They are angry ones, like the infamous Angry Marines or the Angry GM. Some take this prestige class to set themselves apart from the merely upset. Their rage fuels their fury and vice versa. To what end is an important detail. Yeah.
Okay. So your hit dice are D10.
Right.
All right. To qualify to become an angry whatever, one must react in an unreasonably brutal way to some minor offense.
I resent that.
I don't know about that. That seems unfair.
Yeah. Number one, my anger is entirely reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I am not brutal.
No.
Okay, I am very well thought out in my anger. Okay, I'm not like you're making me sound like a barbarian here.
Yeah. It's weird.
In fact, I noticed that to qualify for this, basically you need to be a barbarian because you need the rage class feature.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you can't. It's nice though that you can be any race but a gnome.
That is appropriate. I also disagree with craft rant.
Yeah, they don't. A good rant is not crafted.
No,
a good rant is naturally occurring.
Well, I would say just in the nature of 3.5 or Pathfinder, that should be performance rant.
Oh, you're right.
Okay, a good rant is a performance.
True.
Okay, pure and simple. That is at least a rant people want to listen to.
Yeah. And then we come to the picture that's attached, which I will warn you is not safe for work due to language reasons,
and also something I would never say,
right?
Because I can't pronounce it like that.
That's right. You can't. You have to have a specialized language to say what that says.
I'm actually a little bit disappointed that there is no reference to Grawlix in this.
Yeah.
But I do like, so I'm just briefly looking over the skills. The skill focus accounting.
Yes.
Fair enough. I also like this procrastinate ability, which shows a distressing level of knowing me. That I'm not sure I like in a random fan.
Yeah.
Boiling blood, anger is not good for the heart, yes, but sharpens the mind. So clearly we have captured my intellect and my health problems. My ability to attract followers is also here, which I can't deny.
Right.
I gain a breath weapon, a cone of rant.
How does that work?
Creatures within the cone must succeed on a will save or contemplate their life choices for 1d6 rounds. I wish I had that level of success for making people actually think about their things.
So what you're saying is you're not even at 5th level in your own prestige class.
No, I don't think I am. Either that or the save DC is just a little lower than I'd like. Spell-like abilities, Curse of Petty Failing. Curse of Petty Failing, okay. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Thank you. Dispel Chaos? I guess so. And Power Word Distract, fine. Favorite Terrain Web.
Wait a minute. Wait, stop. What? You need to click on those links. Those are links there in your spell-like abilities.
Those are oh, good grief.
I have just now realized that.
Is this from something? Curse of Petty Failing?
It seems that
it's from the Miniatures Handbook. And it's literally a spell that curses die rolls. It's like a meta spell. It's a spell that someone casts to affect the universe.
Wow.
Yeah, the subject takes a -2 penalty on attack rolls and saving throws. That's it. But it's called the Curse of Petty Failing.
And the curse cannot be dispelled.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be removed with the usual Brink enchantment, wish, miracle, remove curse, that kind of thing. Okay.
Tasha's Hideous Laughter and Dispel Chaos I'm familiar with. Those are both standards from the D&D 3.5 Player's Handbook. Right. Power Word Distract, I assume, has a single verbal component and causes one creature of your choice to become briefly distracted, whether the creature can hear the word or not. And the creature becomes flat-footed until its next turn. Mm-hmm. Which is a 3.5 mechanic. Okay. Sorry, I did skip ahead because I think this Favored Terrain Web is actually really a clever joke.
Yeah.
And also Favored Enemy Troll.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a note here, gets a +2 on bonus. Basically, I get bonuses to intimidate, spot, survival checks against trolls, and a +2 bonus on damage rolls against such creatures, not because he is fundamentally opposed to trolling, but because they dare to question his authority on the art. And finally, I max out at Useless Knowledge.
What?
It's really fair. It really is fair. Here it is on the next page. Power Word Swear. And the power, you actually have to... Oh, it seems the spell formula for Power Word Swear was lost because some idiot censored it.
Ooh.
All right, Jan, this is all very clever, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And also, please stop stalking me. You know too much about me. All right, sir. Right. Well, what about you? Do you want to tell us about Fiddleback?
Sure.
You are a creature template.
I am a creature template. Fiddlebacks are creatures slightly related to quest dragons. Like their scaled relatives, they tend to build a secure home, a shop, or a website, where they lure their respective customers, viewers, listeners, or whoever they are going after. Again, I have a feeling he has been stalking me somewhat.
Yeah.
Creating a Fiddleback.
Mm-hmm.
Fiddleback is an inherited template that can be added to any living corporeal creature with an intelligence score of 4 or higher.
That doesn't set the bar very high.
No, it doesn't. Referred to hereafter as the base creature. A Fiddleback uses all the base creature's statistics and special abilities, except as noted here. Size and type. The creature's type changes to Dragon Quest. Do not recalculate the creature's hit dice, base attack bonus, or saves. Size is unchanged.
Yeah.
Okay. That suggests a mouse-like creature, if it happened to have a 4 intelligence, could be qualified as a dragon all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. Well, a dragon, a quest dragon.
Yes, a quest dragon.
Mm-hmm.
A Fiddleback retains all... Oh, this is special attacks now. A Fiddleback retains all the special attacks of the base creature and gains the following special attacks. charming voice. Once per round, the creature can fascinate every other creature within hearing distance with its beautiful voice. Fair. Curse package. Once per online order, the Fiddleback can curse a package. This package is slowed in its delivery process and has a 10% chance to get lost entirely. I object, sir.
Yeah, that chance is way too low.
Yeah.
Your ability is far more effective than that.
Yes. And then we have Usurp GM. Once per session, the Fiddleback can try to become the new GM of the group. I don't know what motivates that. I don't know what motivates that one.
Really? Okay.
What have I done? How have I offended?
Wait, have you never usurped control of a GMing group?
I have not.
Really?
Never.
Seems like something you'd do.
Right. Reading on. Special qualities. The Fiddleback has all the special qualities of the base creature plus the following. Summon Angry. If the Fiddleback succeeds on a Craft Podcast DC 20 check, he can summon an angry one to help him with his podcast. That also has a way too low DC.
Yeah. This was many years in the making before we actually ended up doing this. So.
That's like a DC 50 or 60, something like that.
There were a lot of failed checks to summon me on the way.
Yes, that's right. Spell-like abilities. Once per day. Word of Genesis. So I'm going to look, and yes, it is a... Gee whiz! Look at all the words in that one.
Yeah, I can summarize. I actually know this spell.
Yeah, it's from the Tome of Magic, and it will now be summarized by Scott.
Yeah, essentially, you are able to create a demi-plane. A reality of your own creation somewhere out in the astral plane that you can shape to your liking. And determine all of the factors of its reality. It also, like, a lot of these rules are just for how fast it grows and how you can travel to it and stuff like that.
Okay.
But you can basically surround yourself with your own pocket universe.
Well, excellent. That's fine. I will accept that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Special quality pool player. A Fiddleback uses a dice pool instead of a D20. Fair. Narrative control. A Fiddleback is capable of telling his own story and can always overrule the GM when interpreting his dice pool. Also fair. Abilities. Increase from the base creature as follows. Intelligence +2, Charisma +6. Okay. Skills. A Fiddleback gains skill points as a quest dragon, and his skill points equal to 6 plus his intelligence modifier times hit dice +3. That seems like a lot.
Nah, that's standard.
Okay. Do not include hit dice from class levels in this calculation. Always proficient in Craft Podcast, Craft Show Notes, and Perform Voice skills.
And technical point, that should be Perform Oratory.
Oratory. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's what we've got. We'll if you guys feel like attempting to look at this and maybe employ it in your game somewhere, we'll put a link to it.
And obviously, we cannot be held responsible for the effects of including this in your game.
No, we're not even checking. We're not even checking for balance, frankly.
Well, quite frankly, I would not be a character in any game that required balance. I tend to unbalance the game pretty badly.
Fair enough.
You know.
Fair enough. We will link to this. I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but I'm kind of interested in seeing what else other people could come up with.
Yeah, certainly.
You know, if somebody wanted to take a run at it as well, we will certainly allow that to happen. I will declare Jan to be the first. I would be interested in seeing a 5e conversion Oh, a 5e conversion.
For the angry class.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
But also, I think they should keep in mind they don't have to be just, prestige classes and monster templates.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like there is a whole, we are not archetypes.
No.
We are a combination of things. We have, a background and a class,
Yeah. we could be an Elminster, like 3 levels of everything.
Well, yeah, it would be interesting to see the accounting background written up.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That's true. So yeah, play around with it, folks. Take it as far as you want it to, and then come to the website, into the comments section and under this episode, and link in wherever it is you have it stored. And we will see what we come up with. That could be fun. So thank you, Jan. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that was really
very amusing. Yes, excellent stuff. This is the place we tell you who's sponsored us for this episode.
And who do we have sponsoring us for this episode?
No one, right at the moment.
And that's why the lights are out, huh?
That's why the lights are out, yes. If you would like to help keep the lights on here at Digressions and Dragons, the podcast, all you have to do is get in contact with us and we will provide you with a handy-dandy rate sheet. We would be happy to plug your appropriate content for this show.
It's too bad this isn't visual because we could just put a big your ad here that you see on bus station buses or bus station benches and call it a day.
Yes, we could. That would be the easy thing to do. So you could have your ad right here if you are a person who runs a related sort of company or whatever.
Well, look. Clearly, if you are listening to the show, you know the sort of people who would be listening to this show. And if those are the sort of people you would like to reach,
get in touch with us. We will put a link down in the show notes. We have covered a lot of ground in this episode already, and I think we're running up against our time budget here. But you had something amusing you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I actually just came across an interesting YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be a link in the show notes, because
of course.
I cannot for the life of me remember who put it up. It was some gaming site. And it's part of a series that they have only done 3 episodes of called War Stories, where they interview a video game designer about an interesting incident and what they learned from it. Now, sir, are you familiar with the Ultima series of computer games?
I am in a vague way familiar with that. I mean, I know what it is, and I know it's like 5 different ones. And there's, it was among the first sort of MMO kind of things, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the original Ultima games were computer role-playing games. They were actually based on Richard Garriott, who called himself Lord British's home D&D campaign.
Right.
Which was fascinating because in the first Ultima game, among other things, you had to kill a number of monsters to prove yourself worthy of the title of knight, whereupon you could obtain a license to fly a spaceship and shoot down Imperial TIE fighters, and then in so doing earn access to a time machine so that you could travel back in time and kill the evil wizard Mondane before he completed his Gem of Immortality, because after he completed it, he couldn't be killed. Which sort of tells you something about Richard Garriott's home D&D campaign. It must have been fantastic.
Yes.
But indeed,
over the top.
Ultima was one of, the Ultima Online, as it was called, was one of the first multiplayer online role-playing games that actually had a persistent open world. America Online did several gold box style D&D games, like the original Neverwinter Nights, but this was the first really graphical, persistent universe that multiple players could log in, and it came at a time just as internet access was becoming commonplace and dial-up modems were being phased out and broadband was starting to exist. So it came at a really important time. And they realized as they were designing the game that, well, they had no idea how many players would be interested in this. The Ultimate games were popular, but, there was no way of knowing, because no one had ever done anything like this before, how many players they'd have to deal with. But they were pretty sure that they wouldn't be able to create enough content for all of those players, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they'd never keep up, basically. So they decided that what they needed to do was create an ecology for the world, so that the world would behave like a natural world and would populate itself with things to do. So they coded, plants that would grow. And once the plants grew to a certain age, they would become available as food for prey creatures, which they called herbivores. And then the herbivores would roam around and eat the grass, or, eat the plants, and then the plants would be cut back down. And it was basically, you could actually watch lawn being mowed in the game by goats as they wandered around, because they would eat the grass down and then the graphics would change. Okay. And the herbivores would reproduce at a rate based on how much food they could find and eat. So if they overate all the vegetation, the herbivores would stop reproducing until the things came back into balance. And, that population would find an equilibrium. And then they programmed the predator creatures, like lions and bears and stuff, which would spawn in more remote areas, and they would eat prey creatures. And if they ate enough prey creatures, they would reproduce and spawn more. So this whole thing would settle into sort of a natural balance. And then they set a rate at which plants would grow to tweak it all. And they figured this was great, because then they made the carnivore creatures, or the predator creatures, were part of the goal of the game. So if you killed them, you could skin them for pelts and sell the pelts, or use their flesh to fulfill quest requirements and stuff like that, or crafting requirements, what have you. And the herbivore creatures were much less valuable to kill. They were pretty much useless, right? They figured this is great. That meant that if it took them weeks to build more quests after people had gone through the content that existed, players would occupy themselves by just hunting down the carnivores, and there was always something to do. So they flipped the switch, and as soon as the game goes live, and Richard Garriott in the interview, he literally described the player base as a swarm of ants. They swept across the game world and killed literally everything that existed. They didn't care. Herbivore, carnivore, quest goal, or not. The killing was just fun. Mm-hmm. Okay? And they would watch, and a goat would spawn, and the nearest player would immediately descend on it and hack it into pieces. And it didn't matter that there was no reward for killing the goat. They were worth no experience points, no money or anything else. They murdered it because murdering was fun. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, they tried to play with the spawn rate, to tweak everything, to find desperately some balance at which the players would not completely collapse the entire virtual ecosystem of the game. And in the end, they could not do it, and they finally had to just rip out all of the ecosystem coding, such that almost no one even knows it was ever a part of the game. But as an interesting side note, one of the solutions they did end up hitting on was the realization that all of the players sharing one map was a little bit too much. It would always overwhelm the world. Mm-hmm. So they went back to that whole Gem of Immortality thing and said that, when Mondain had been killed, because this was part of the world's history, the Gem of Immortality had shattered. And inside each gem had formed another universe, another version of the planet of Sosaria? I think it was Sosaria. And they were called shards. And this was the origin of separating role-playing games into separate servers. Mm. And there are some like after that, like database applications started doing the same thing where they would split split database users among multiple instances of the database so that no one database would get overwhelmed with like search requests or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And although many database administrators do not know why now, in many corners, the database instances are still referred to as shards. Yeah. But meanwhile, yeah, it really was. It was just a fascinating story. And the interviewer asked, like, "What did you learn from this?" And I said, "Well, what we learned is no amount of in-house testing is ever enough. You never know what the players are actually going to do until you throw that game into the wild." But yeah, it was just a fascinating story. And as I'm listening to it, I was immediately thinking of all those GMs who insist on like building random tables to manage like, you try to simulate a world or an economy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like sort of the same thing, except you don't have millions of players. You have 5 players. That seems like a much more manageable prospect.
Right.
And I could probably talk about that for hours.
Yeah. I want to point out 2 things.
Yeah.
I want to point out that Ultima Online still runs.
Yes, I am aware. I actually started replaying. I jumped back in and played for a little while. I was big into it back in the day.
And it is, I think, coming up on its 20th anniversary.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
One of these days we should talk about maybe getting together and having a session in Ultima Online.
Did you play it?
I did for a little bit. And I would love to tell you all about that and how fun it was and what I accomplished in there, but we are out of time.